But Alex says he's gonna sign it because he's found the perfect activity. He's gonna skydive. And then Louis is like, hot dog. Elaine is gonna try to stop him from signing and doing the skydiving, but Louis just shoves her face away. The only thing Alex wants to know now is, who's coming with him? Welcome back to another episode of The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking another episode of Taxi. For those of you who are new to the show, I'm just going to give you a brief agenda here. We start off with the potent notables, which are just a couple interesting facts or tidbits that I found out about the episode or series. Then I go into the episode overview, which is just me talking about the episode from beginning to end, so spoiler alert. And then I do the rank, where I rank the episode in 5 categories on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, all to figure out what are the best sitcoms of all time. And today I'm going to be ranking the 21st episode of the second season of Taxi, titled Alex Jumps Out of an Airplane, written by Ken Eston and directed by Jimmy Burrows. But let's find out how this one stacks up, starting with the potent notables.
Potent notables.
So this 43rd episode of Taxi was released Tuesday, February 26, 1980. Last week it went from 12th to 13th in the ratings, and this week it dropped out of the top 15 altogether. And so since that's the only thing that I can see on the New York Times archives, I have no idea how it did in the rankings. But I do have a couple referential potent notables today. One is that the song Being Alive, which Alex sings in this episode, is from a musical called Company. And the other is that the plane that they use in this one is the exact same plane that is used in a Hawaii Five-0 episode titled McGarrett is Missing. Also, this is one of the few episodes that contain no scenes in the garage at all. So there you go, those are potent notables. Let's go to the episode overview. We open this week's episode with the gang hanging at the cabbie restaurant sans Alex, and Louis is desperately trying to get a seat at the table with them. Of course, they won't allow it because that's the rule. Louis not allowed to drink with them. But Louis convinces them he's got a problem that he needs to talk about. What's the problem? Well, when he sits down, he tells them the problem is that he's bored. So bored, in fact, that he can't think of anything better to do than to sit and drink with these losers. And then Jim, in complete earnestness, says, boy, that's a real shame. So we've got a solid start here. I will say, though, that with the strong start, it hadn't actually made me laugh yet, but I felt good about where we were headed. Then the bartender calls out to Louis and says, hey, Mackenzie wants you back at the garage. And Louis is like, man, this place would fall apart without me. I was just there 2 minutes ago and he already needs me back. So he calls back to the bartender and he's like, what did he need me for? Did he say? And apparently it was just that he wanted Louis to get him some cigarettes. And then like almost instantly, Louis turns and is like, if anybody laughs, you're gonna get a cab with no brakes. And Tony is the guy who is having the hardest time not laughing. So Bobby's like, hey, just think of something sad. To which Jim says, yeah, like how the boss wants Louis to get him cigarettes like he's some kind of flunky. And this broke the seal of laughter for me, my first laugh of the episode. Louis leaves and Alex comes in. And the first thing they do is they ask Alex how his latest ski trip was. I guess that's the thing now. Alex likes to ski. They used that as an excuse for him being away for an episode when he was shooting Ordinary People, but I guess they're bringing it back. Well, he loved it. He was up in Lake Placid, which is clever because this is the year that they had the Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, and it's probably the most memorable Winter Olympics for Americans because it was when the Miracle on Ice happened. Anyway, while he was there, he met a beautiful blue-eyed woman named Linda who convinced him to do a ski jump. Now, if you were to ask me, I would be less likely to do a ski jump than jump out of a plane. But that's just me. What about you guys? Ski jumping or skydiving? If you had to pick one, which one would it be? Anyway, we get an engaging bit from Alex about how exhilarating it was to do the ski jump. And a good joke where he says it's like a thin line between going and not going, because if you shift your weight just the littlest bit, like more slight than you would even think, at least more than he thought. Heck, he actually landed on his feet, then his head, then his back, then his feet again. Basically, he came down the hill as a snowball. But Alex is all pumped up, just full of adrenaline. He's just never lived before. Eventually, he ends up walking over to the piano that's in the restaurant and insisting on playing because it was a fear that he wants to face. See, he's decided that he's going to face all his fears. That's the only way to truly live. Now, when he started playing and singing terribly, I did start to get worried for the episode. And then it just kept going. And I started to get really worried about the episode because this is just something that Taxi for some reason is wont to do. They tend to do things and just play it out and run it into the ground and lose all their momentum. And I don't understand it. But earlier, when Tony was comparing thrill-seeking to boxing, Alex had actually agreed with him and asked if Tony would like to train him. Elaine, who was shocked by the ski jumping thing, really tries to stop the boxing thing. Either way, when the song finally ends and Alex gets a standing ovation, which I can only assume was because they were happy he was finally done, we have the boxing to look forward to. So we're at the gym now with Tony teaching Alex how to box, and what I thought was kind of fun was that you could actually see how quick Tony Danza's reflexes were from his years of boxing. So after a little bit of training with Tony, who constantly keeps talking about these fights that he loses, Alex says he's ready to spar. Now, Tony thinks this is a bad idea, and I agree with you, Tony, it is a bad idea, but Alex insists. He wants to spar, maybe not with a pro, because that's a bad idea, right? But with a good amateur, because he's had, 10 minutes of training, so it's time. So Tony walks up to this guy in the back and asks if he'd spar with his friend Alex, but, just go easy on him. But Alex hears and he's like, hey, don't take it easy on me. I'm going to give it my all and you should too. And then there's like a beat and Alex immediately starts to back down and goes, you don't have to go crazy or anything. Now this made me laugh, which was great because it seemed like they were actually going to be making a decent comeback from the whole piano thing. After that, they make another good move by not having Alex be suddenly good at boxing. They had him get knocked out, and it was actually a really funny scene. The other guy clocks him, and Alex just goes down. But then Tony's like, hey, you got knocked out, and Alex is all excited. I got knocked out. I took a punch. I stood toe-to-toe with a boxer, and I took a punch, faced my fear. But that ends the boxing portion of the episode. And it was pretty good. From there, we go back to the bar, and Jim is already there drinking. He wants a beer, and the bartender's like, hey, Jim, I think you've had enough. And Jim's like, hey, the morning's young. The morning is a good joke. But what really got me is that he convinces the bartender to give him another. So the bartender fills up a mug, shoves it down the bar, and Jim doesn't even move. It just slides past him off the bar onto the floor. That was a fun visual, and Jim is just great with these types of jokes. And he's like, hey, I guess you were right. I did have too many. And he starts to head home, but when he's heading home, the gang is just coming in. And Bobby's like, oh, Jim, don't tell me you're leaving. And Jim's like, okay, but if you hear about it later, you didn't hear it from me. And it's funny because this leaves you wanting more Jim. Like, I want to say, man, I could just watch Jim the whole episode. But logically, I know that if they do too much of him, it'll cease to be funny. So they're actually doing the right thing by just leaving you wanting. Anyway, the gang is at the restaurant and they're without Alex. Elaine even says, anyone know what Rieger Knievel is up to today? When Alex eventually does show up, though, he's clearly coming down from the adrenaline rushes of the previous week. He's had a normal week this week and he needs a rush. He even picked up Thrill Seeker magazine to get some ideas. While he's looking for one, Louie is going to come running in with papers for Alex to sign. What are the papers? Louie took out a life insurance policy on Alex, which is a really clever and fun joke. He's trying to sweeten the pot to convince Alex to sign, and he says, I put Kathy, your daughter, as the co-beneficiary. And I love that we're bringing up Alex's daughter that we only have ever seen in the first episode, where Alex says he's going to be a better dad and then promptly never talks about her again. But Alex says he's going to sign it because he's found the perfect activity. He's going to skydive. And then Louie is like, hot dog. Elaine is going to try to stop him from signing and doing the skydiving, but Louie just shoves her face away. The only thing Alex wants to know now is who's coming with him. We find out soon enough, though. Louie and Bobby are going with him. Now, they're not going to go skydiving. They're just on the plane with him for moral support, I guess. Now, we get the obvious bit with Alex starting to second guess his resolve and Louie hoping for the 50K. But I loved when Alex gave Bobby and Louie a thumbs up, and they both returned the thumbs up. But as soon as Alex is looking away from Louie like crosses his eyes and does a thumbs down. It's just one of those jokes where if it was done by just an actor, it wouldn't work. It has to be done by somebody who's actually funny. Because it's the face that Danny makes that makes the joke work. The bit I wasn't expecting was Bobby hitting on the skydiving instructor, who says that skydiving is better than sex. To which Bobby immediately replies, most sex. Anyway, Alex gets to the edge of the plane and starts to second guess himself, but eventually he's gonna go for it, yelling, Geronimo! And when he yells that, we pan away, we just see the plane in the sky, but nobody leaves the plane. Which is like an expected joke, but it was still cute and it still worked. Bobby's like, Alex, you're still here. And he's like, oh, my voice jumped, but my body didn't. But he does eventually do it. And then we get some really weird voiceover from him as we're watching him fall through the sky. But that's not the end of the episode. We get a sort of tag at the end of the episode here with Alex rhapsodizing about the experience to the gang. and them all being bored out of their minds with it. It was a cute ending, but let's see how it ranked.
Oh, wait.
So the rank is where I rank the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And then I have a laugh counter where I tally up the amount of times the episode made me laugh out loud. 1 point per laugh out loud gets added to the score. But before I start ranking, I just want to say, if you're enjoying this episode, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. But without further ado, the first category is story. And this was a great story. Alex has a life-changing experience, and so we follow him on his quest to fulfill this new need of thrill-seeking. It's sort of an abstract story in that it doesn't provide a clear arc, but the writing was good enough that an arc was pulled off nonetheless. So I gave it a 5. That brings us to acting. Judd Hirsch got to show off a bit in this episode, and he handled it well. Whenever they have a very Alex-centered episode that isn't too heavy, he is usually pretty fun to watch. I thought everyone was excellent in this, actually. I liked that we got a little time with Tony and Louie. I'm glad that we didn't spend a ton of time with Bobby or Elaine, since we just had 2 episodes of Elaine, but I gave it a 4.5. So that brings us to dialogue. So one thing has become clear. Either the show is getting better and it's holding its own, or I've just gotten used to it. But this one was decently funny, and while the show does tend to bog itself down in extemporaneous exposition, it wasn't terrible, and most of the jokes landed. There weren't many that came off as too much either, except for the piano stuff. It was a well-written episode. I gave it a 4.35. So that brings us to episode coherence. We had another part in this one the taxis want to do for some reason. We get a really long portion that is just unnecessary. Why did we end up listening to Alex poorly sing a song for a full 2 or 3 minutes? I just cannot fathom who thought this was a good idea. Everything else actually worked really well, so I didn't dock it too much for the ridiculous song at the beginning. I gave it a 4. That brings us to character relatability, and honestly, this was a very relatable episode. I think that when you start doing adrenaline-inducing things, you tend to want to do more of them. Not everyone feels that way, but I do think it's pretty common. I can also relate to the idea of people being worried about a friend who is thrill-seeking. It's a little harder to relate to Louie trying to profit off of his dangerous lifestyle, but it makes sense for Louie. I gave it a 4.5. So some really good scores here. So even just a decent laugh counter will definitely keep it into the top 3 tiers. And it got me 14 times, which is pretty good. So there you have it, a grand total of 36.25, which puts the episode in the Holy Grail. And as for the series average, it jumps up a little bit more to a 26.4, moving a little bit further up in mediocre, but it's definitely climbing with several top 3 tier episodes in a row. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your scores in the comments. I'd be really curious to find out, especially the laugh counter. But thanks for listening and or watching. Check out the other Taxi episodes that I've ranked or any of the other sitcom or movie episodes that I've done. Remember to subscribe, comment, and like. For up-to-date rankings, you can check out the website at therankpodcast.com, where you can also email me at john@therankpodcast.com. And if you want to really support the show, you can become a patron at patreon.com/therankpodcast. But I will leave you with this. Why did the girl Alex met in Lake Placid show up at the gym when Tony was teaching Alex how to box?
Why is that?
Because she was a knockout. You know what? It could be worse. It could be worse, Antonio.
I find that hard to believe.
So the rank is where I rank the So the rank is where I rank the episode on 5 category. I don't know why I'm having trouble here.
Drinking on the job?